This is my grandfather's plane. It's a Bailey Stanley number 8 plane, and it's probably about 75 years old. Now, my grandfather passed away in 2023, and I just figured today would be a good day to restore this plane back to a usable condition and hopefully honor him a little bit with this project and with this tool. First thing that I'm going to do is take it apart and see what kind of condition it's in. Clearly you can see there's plenty of rust on this thing. The blade is not in the best shape, but we've got a little bit of work to do. Taking out all the hardware, I want to get it cleaned up, shiny it up. Now I tried my hardest to get this frog off, but I bent my screwdriver, so it needed more power, right? Well, I broke my bit too. So that frog is staying on. I do want to make sure that it's still flat, so I've got a file and scraped off as much rust as I could just to make sure that it is one flat surface for the iron to go on. Now I want to try to get all this rust off. So I am using some CLR. Now, I've used this before on some of my tools to get some rust off of those, and it's worked alright, so I'm just going to use a wire brush to kind of scrape off as much as I can. It does a pretty good job. You can also see there's quite a bit of paint on here, so I had to scrape that off. And also, pretty good job. It's not perfect, but definitely prettier than it used to be. One piece at a time. We gotta get this rust off. Here is the iron, and I decided to use some power. What I'm doing here is I've got a water bottle with a hole poked in the lid, with a little bit of water and soap mixture, and that soap helps to get that rust, little rust particles away, and I think it just kind of helps the process on a little bit. Now this was super messy, but pretty effective. Now here I'm trying a little bit of a different approach, trying to go dry because it was so messy, but that wasn't working super well. So let's be smarter about this. Just put it on the ground. Now, as we go throughout this video, you will see my fingers and how absolutely filthy I got. Now again, we're not going for perfection here. We're just going for a little bit better and definitely more usable. This looks like it is the original Stanley iron. Got some pit marks on there, so this thing is going to have to be replaced eventually, but I think that I'll be able to get some out of this. Now you can see the iron isn't quite level. It's not 90 degrees flat, so we need to grind it flat and then sharpen it. To do that, I'm using this belt sander and wheel sander, whatever it's called. And that's just to get it 90 degrees first. Flipping it back and forth just to make sure that we can get it as square as possible. Now you can see this little reflection right there on the end. That shows you that it is very, very dull. It's not sharp at all. So here I'm just adding a little bit of oil so it doesn't heat up too much, and I'm trying to get back down to a pretty sharp state. At least get the right angle on there. You can see all these pit marks. None of them are right on the edge, so we can still get some use out of this. But as soon as those pit marks are on the edge, it won't give you a clean cut. So after putting this in my angle gauge, it's just on to sharpening. First, I'm using my whetstone, and this is on the 400 grit side. And you can see there's a little bit of that reflection there on the end, meaning that it is not quite sharp. So we're going to keep on going. Now you can also see there are two bevels here. One is from the rough shaping on the belt sander, and then one is from this wet sanding block. You want to make sure that that bevel is all the way across before you switch to a finer grit. Now we're going to 1000. And you want to sand or sharpen not only just the bevel, but you want to sharpen the backside too.
Now you'll see on the bevel there are two shiny parts, basically two bevels, one from sharpening here and one from the belt sander. Now we need to move into honing it, getting it a little bit sharper. So I'm going to sharpen both the bevel and the back, moving up the grits starting at 1500 and going up to 3000 to try to give it that mirror finish.
So I've legitimately tried to do that scary sharp thing for years and be able to shave with it and all that. This is the first time that I've actually done it. So you can still see some of the hair on there. That's gross. That is super sharp. Really proud of that one.
Now we're going to move on to the body and the sole of the plane. Now here I'm just gluing on some 600 grit paper to be able to use my disc sander, and just using that to clean up the body with a little bit of water and soap. Well, since this is my granddad's plane, I thought it would be nice to share a little bit about his story. His name was Lloyd A. Ponder. He grew up in a small town in Louisiana, and when he graduated high school, the war was really picking up, and he ended up joining the Army Air Corps. From there, he was sent over to the Philippines, and unfortunately, the planes never made it. He was an airplane mechanic that was turned into an infantry. Well, in his time there, he was in Bataan. Now, his unit was actually on the Bataan Death March, but he was somehow separated from his unit because he had malaria and he was disoriented. That was a gift from God because, as I said before, his unit went on to the Bataan Death March. He linked up with some other guys from other parts of the military, and they found a boat to go over to Corregidor. Corregidor is where they had the last stand when Japan came in and took the Philippines. Lloyd was stationed right by the airstrip on Corregidor, which is just a small island in the Manila Bay. And that airstrip is where Japan invaded. He was right in the thick of it. Well, a few months later, they ended up surrendering, and Japan took them all as prisoners. He spent 3 years as a prisoner of war for the Japanese. 2 of those years were in different camps all around Manila, and 1 year was in Japan. After the war, Lloyd went on to become a superintendent of a local trade school. He had 2 kids and a wife that he was married to for many, many years. He died in 2023 at the age of 102. He was a great man and a hero to the country. If you want to know more about him, please let me know in the comments or reach out. Now let's get back to the video. Now to clean up these screw caps, I just put them in a drill press and press them down on a piece of wood on different grits of sandpaper, working up to about 600, and it gives it a nice shiny finish. And now it's time to assemble it and give it a test run. To start off, you want the blade to protrude ever so slightly from the sole of the plane. You can adjust it from there. To get it dialed in, I've got a rough piece of pine, and I'm working the plane back and forth from edge to edge, trying to get an even shaving on both sides of the iron. And this is what you're looking for.
Well, this was a good project, and I think a great way to honor my grandfather. If you want to know more about his awesome story, please let me know. I'd be happy to share it with you. This is the second plane that I've restored from him. This was the first one back here. And I'm not gonna redo the handles just yet. It kind of reminds me of him, and I don't want to finish that up just yet. But it is back in great working condition, and I can be using this a lot for my future projects. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.